Welcome to Let's Learn English Through Story. I'm Harry, your host for today's adventure. Picture this. You wake up tomorrow morning, check the news, and see the most shocking headline of your lifetime. What would happen if Russia's leader vanished? Get ready, everyone, because this story will take you on an exciting journey about political power, global consequences, and the delicate balance that keeps our world stable. After our thrilling exploration, we will review some useful vocabulary to help you understand complex political situations. But first, let me introduce my colleague, Tom, who will guide us through this fascinating what-if scenario. Tom, take it away.
Chapter 1, The Morning That Changed Everything. Good morning, everyone. Tom here, and I want you to imagine something incredible. It's 7 a.m. in Moscow on a cold Tuesday morning. The sun rises over the Kremlin, but something is different. Vladimir Putin, Russia's leader for over 2 decades, has disappeared. Not injured, not sick, simply gone without a trace. First, let me paint you a picture. Putin controls the largest country in the world. Russia spans 11 time zones and has 144 million people. He makes decisions that affect millions of lives every single day. Now imagine if that decision maker suddenly vanished into thin air. The first people to notice would be his security team. These are highly trained professionals who watch Putin 24 hours a day. They would immediately start a secret search. Phone calls would fly between government buildings. Officials would whisper nervously in hallways. But here's the key question. How long could they keep this secret? In our modern world, secrets don't last long. Social media spreads information faster than wildfire. Someone would notice empty offices, canceled meetings, missing signatures on important documents. The news would leak within hours, maybe minutes. Think about your own life for a moment. What happens when your boss doesn't show up to work? Now multiply that confusion by millions. That's what would happen in Russia if Putin disappeared tomorrow. Chapter 2, The Power Vacuum Crisis. Now let's talk about what happens next. In politics, we call this a power vacuum. Imagine a giant empty space where leadership used to be. Nature hates empty spaces, and so does politics. Someone must fill that space. But who? Russia's government has a constitution, just like many countries. According to this document, the prime minister should take control temporarily. But here's the problem. Putin has been Russia's real decision maker for so long that many officials depend on his approval for everything. Picture a company where only one person knows all the passwords. If that person disappears, chaos follows. The same thing would happen in Russia. Many government officials would freeze. They wouldn't know what decisions to make without Putin's guidance. Different groups would compete for power. Some generals might want military control, business leaders might push for economic changes, regional governors might declare independence for their areas. Each group would claim they represent the real Russia. This competition could turn dangerous quickly. Throughout history, power struggles have led to civil wars, economic crashes, and social unrest. Russia's vast territory and diverse population would make this situation especially complicated. International observers would watch nervously. Unstable Russia affects everyone because Russia has nuclear weapons, vast natural resources, and borders with many countries. Chapter 3, Economic Earthquake. But let's explore the economic impact of Putin's disappearance. Russia's economy is like a huge machine with Putin as the main operator. Without him, this machine would start shaking violently. First, consider Russia's stock market. When investors hear uncertain news, they panic. They sell their investments quickly, causing prices to crash. The Russian ruble, their currency, would probably lose value immediately. People's savings would shrink overnight. Russia exports oil and gas to many countries. These energy resources are Russia's main source of income. If political chaos erupts, other countries might worry about reliable energy supplies. They would quickly look for alternative sources, causing Russia to lose customers and money. Russian businesses would face massive problems. Many companies depend on government contracts and political connections. Without Putin's network, these businesses might collapse. Unemployment would rise, and people would struggle to buy basic necessities. But here's something interesting. This crisis might also create opportunities. New leaders might introduce democratic reforms, reduce corruption, or open markets to international competition. Young Russian entrepreneurs might finally get chances to build innovative companies. The global economy would feel tremors too. Russia is a major supplier of wheat, metals, and other raw materials. Supply chain disruptions would affect prices worldwide. Your local grocery store might even see price changes because of events thousands of miles away. Chapter 4, The Nuclear Question. Now we reach the most serious topic, nuclear weapons. Russia has approximately 6,000 nuclear warheads, enough to destroy civilization. What happens to these weapons if Putin disappears? The Russian military has strict protocols for nuclear weapons. Multiple people must agree before using them. These systems exist specifically to prevent unauthorized use. However, during political chaos, these safety systems might weaken. Different military commanders might disagree about nuclear policy. Some might want to threaten other countries to maintain power, others might want to reduce nuclear tensions. This disagreement could create dangerous situations. International organizations like the United Nations would mobilize immediately. They would send diplomats to Moscow to ensure nuclear security. The United States, China, and European countries would offer assistance to maintain stability. Here's a crucial point. Nuclear weapons require constant maintenance and security. If Russia's government collapsed, these weapons could become vulnerable to theft or accidents. Terrorist groups might try to steal nuclear materials. This scenario keeps security experts awake at night. However, most experts believe Russia's nuclear forces would remain secure. The military has strong traditions of professionalism and loyalty to the state, not just to Putin personally. Still, the international community would monitor the situation very carefully. Chapter 5, International Reactions. The world would react to Putin's disappearance in fascinating ways. Different countries would see this event as either an opportunity or a crisis, depending on their relationship with Russia. The United States and European countries would probably feel relieved initially. Putin has been a challenging opponent in international politics. His disappearance might end conflicts in Ukraine and reduce tensions globally. NATO countries might reduce their military spending and focus on other priorities. However, these same countries would also worry about instability. A chaotic Russia could create refugee crises, economic problems, and security threats. They would likely offer humanitarian aid and technical assistance to help maintain stability. China's reaction would be particularly interesting. Russia and China are strategic partners, but they also compete for influence. China might try to fill the power vacuum by expanding its influence in Central Asia and the Arctic. Alternatively, China might support Russian stability to prevent chaos on its northern border. Countries like India, Turkey, and Iran would need to recalculate their foreign policies. They have complex relationships with Russia involving trade, security, and regional politics. Putin's disappearance would force them to adapt quickly. The United Nations would face enormous challenges. Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council with veto power. If Russia's government collapsed, who would represent Russia in international organizations? This question would create diplomatic complications worldwide. Chapter 6: The People's Response. Let's talk about ordinary Russian citizens. How would they react to Putin's sudden disappearance? The answer depends on many factors, including age, location, and personal beliefs. Some Russians would celebrate. They view Putin as an authoritarian leader who restricts freedom and democracy. These people might organize protests demanding democratic reforms. They would see Putin's disappearance as an opportunity to build a more open society. Other Russians would feel frightened and confused. Putin has been their leader for over 20 years. Many people, especially older citizens, associate him with stability and strength. They might worry about chaos, economic collapse, or foreign invasion. Young Russians would likely have mixed feelings. They grew up under Putin's rule, but also have access to international information through the internet. Many young people want more freedom and economic opportunities. They might support democratic changes while worrying about short-term instability. Regional differences would be significant. Moscow and St. Petersburg residents might embrace change more readily than people in rural areas. Ethnic minorities in distant regions might see this as a chance for greater autonomy or independence. The government would probably restrict internet access and control information to prevent panic. However, modern communication technology makes total information control nearly impossible. People would find ways to share news and organize responses despite official restrictions. Chapter 7: Possible Scenarios. Now let's explore different scenarios that might unfold. Political scientists call these what-if situations, and they help us understand complex possibilities. Scenario 1: Peaceful transition. The Prime Minister takes control smoothly. Government institutions function normally. Elections are held within months. Russia becomes more democratic and reduces international tensions. This optimistic scenario requires strong institutions and popular support for democratic change. But scenario 2: military takeover. Army generals seize power to maintain order. They establish military rule temporarily, but promise eventual civilian government. This scenario might provide stability, but could also lead to authoritarianism. Many countries have experienced military governments during crisis periods. Scenario 3: regional fragmentation. Different regions declare independence or autonomy. Siberia, the Caucasus, and other areas might separate from central control. This scenario could create multiple smaller countries from current Russia. It would be similar to the Soviet Union's collapse in 1991. Scenario 4. Civil conflict. Different groups fight for control. Economic collapse and social unrest spread throughout the country. International intervention becomes necessary to prevent humanitarian disaster. This worst-case scenario would affect millions of people and destabilize the entire region. Most experts believe a combination of these scenarios would occur. Different regions might experience different situations simultaneously. The final outcome would depend on many factors, including international support, economic conditions, and popular movements. Chapter 8. Long-term consequences. Finally, let's consider the long-term consequences of Putin's disappearance. Changes this dramatic would reshape Russia and the world for decades. If Russia became more democratic, it might integrate better with the international community. Trade would increase, scientific cooperation would expand, and cultural exchanges would flourish. Russian scientists, artists, and entrepreneurs might contribute more to global progress. The global balance of power would shift significantly. The United States and China would need to adjust their strategies. European countries might feel more secure and confident. International organizations might function more effectively without Russian opposition to various initiatives. Environmental issues might improve. Russia contains vast forests and natural resources. A more cooperative Russian government might participate actively in climate change solutions. International conservation efforts could expand into Russian territory. However, negative consequences are also possible. Political instability might last for years. Economic problems could create poverty and social problems. Brain drain might occur as educated Russians emigrate to other countries. The nuclear weapons question would remain critical. International agreements would be necessary to ensure continued security. This process might take years and require careful diplomacy. Regional conflicts might intensify. Without Russian influence, some areas might experience increased violence. International peacekeeping efforts might become necessary in multiple locations. One thing is certain. Putin's disappearance would mark the end of an era. The world would need to adapt to a new reality where Russia plays a different role in international affairs. Vocabulary review, Harry.
Hi, everyone. Harry here. What an incredible journey Tom just took us on. You know, when I was listening to Tom explore this fascinating scenario, I noticed some really useful words that I think we should practice together. These words appear frequently in political discussions and news reports, so understanding them will help you follow current events much better. Now start with the word disappearance. This means when someone or something goes away suddenly and cannot be found. For example, the airplane's disappearance shocked the whole world. Can you say that with me? The airplane's disappearance shocked the whole world. One more time. The airplane's disappearance shocked the whole world. Great. Speaking of sudden changes, another important word is chaos. This means a situation where everything is confused and nothing is organized properly. Here's an example. The power outage caused chaos in the city center. Let's practice that together. The power outage caused chaos in the city center. And again, the power outage caused chaos in the city center. Excellent. That reminds me of another useful word, stability. This is the opposite of chaos. It means when situations are steady and predictable. For example, economic stability helps families plan for the future. Can you repeat that? Economic stability helps families plan for the future. One more time. Economic stability helps families plan for the future. Perfect. Now, when we talk about politics, we often use the word consequences. This means the results or effects that happen because of an action. Here's a clear example. The government's decision had serious consequences for education. Let's say it together. The government's decision had serious consequences for education. And once more, the government's decision had serious consequences for education. Well done. Finally, let's practice the word scenario. This means a possible situation that might happen in the future. For instance, scientists study different climate change scenarios. Can you say that with me? Scientists study different climate change scenarios. One more time. Scientists study different climate change scenarios. Fantastic work, everyone. Well, that brings us to the end of today's thought-provoking adventure. We've explored one of the most complex what-if questions in modern politics. From economic earthquakes to nuclear concerns, from international reactions to ordinary people's responses, we've seen how one person's disappearance could reshape our entire world. Remember, this story teaches us about conditionals in English, those important if statements that help us discuss possibilities and consequences. You heard phrases like, what would happen if, and if Putin disappeared then? These structures are essential for advanced English communication. Most importantly, this story shows us how interconnected our world really is. Events in one country affect people everywhere. Understanding these connections helps us become more informed global citizens and better English speakers. Keep practicing these vocabulary words in your daily conversations. Try creating your own what-if scenarios using the conditional structures we explored today. The more you practice, the more confident you'll become. Thanks for sticking around till the end of the story. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new story. Have a wonderful day. Take care and see you next time.